What if the most important Volkswagen of the 21st century wasn't a GDI at all? For decades, the letters GDI had represented everything enthusiasts loved about the Golf. Lightweight, practical, affordable, and surprisingly fun to drive, the GDI had created an entirely new class of performance cars back in the 1970s. By the early 2000s, however, the automotive world had changed. Manufacturers were building faster hatchbacks than ever before, all-wheel drive was becoming increasingly sophisticated, and customers wanted performance that could be enjoyed in every season, not just on dry summer roads. Volkswagen faced a difficult question. How do you improve upon a legend that had already changed the industry? The obvious answer was to build a faster GDI. But the engineers had something far more ambitious in mind. They didn't want to make the best GDI. They wanted to build the ultimate Golf. A car with no compromises. A car that combined six-cylinder performance, intelligent all-wheel drive, cutting-edge transmission technology, and everyday practicality into one remarkably complete package. It was a bold idea because nothing like it had ever existed within the Golf family. Under the hood would sit Volkswagen's remarkable 3.2-liter VR6 engine, an engineering masterpiece unlike any conventional V6. Power would be sent to all four wheels through an advanced Haldex all-wheel drive system, giving the car traction that previous Golfs could only dream about. And for drivers willing to embrace the future, Volkswagen introduced something that would eventually transform the entire automotive industry, the world's first mass-produced dual-clutch transmission in a passenger car. Today we know it as DSG. Back then, it felt like science fiction. Yet perhaps the most remarkable thing about the Golf R32 wasn't its technology. It was what the car represented. Until then, Volkswagen had always built performance cars that balanced excitement with affordability. The R32 ignored that philosophy. It wasn't designed to be cheap. It wasn't designed to satisfy everyone. It was built to show exactly what Volkswagen engineers could achieve when they were allowed to chase perfection instead of compromise. Looking back today, it's clear that the R32 wasn't simply another fast Golf. It became the blueprint for every Golfer that followed, and in many ways, it changed Volkswagen forever. When the Golf R32 finally reached customers, it immediately became clear that this wasn't simply a faster GDI. It felt like a completely different machine. The heart of the car was Volkswagen's legendary 3.2-liter VR6 engine, producing around 241 horsepower and 320 Nm of torque. Those numbers were impressive in the early 2000s, but they don't explain why people still talk about the R32 today. The real magic came from the character of the engine itself. Unlike the screaming four-cylinder engines used by many rivals, the VR6 delivered smooth, effortless power accompanied by one of the most distinctive exhaust notes ever fitted to a hot hatch. It didn't sound like a typical V6, nor did it resemble an inline-six. It had a deep metallic growl that became more aggressive with every increase in RPM. Even today, many enthusiasts consider it one of the greatest engine sounds Volkswagen has ever produced. Personally, I think the VR6 is one of those rare engines that gives a car its soul. Remove it, and the R32 becomes just another fast hatchback. With it, the car has a personality that modern turbocharged engines often struggle to match. But the engine was only half of the story. For the first time in a Golf performance model, Volkswagen paired serious power with an advanced all-wheel drive system based on Haldex technology. Unlike permanent mechanical all-wheel drive systems found in some competitors, Haldex continuously monitored wheel slip and could instantly send power to the rear axle whenever additional traction was needed. Under normal driving conditions, the car behaved primarily as a front-wheel drive vehicle, improving efficiency. The moment the front wheels began to lose grip, however, the system reacted in milliseconds, transforming the R32 into a remarkably secure and confidence-inspiring performance car. This gave the Golf something previous GDIs could never offer: usable speed in almost every weather condition. Rain, snow, cold asphalt, it hardly mattered. While many front-wheel drive hot hatches struggled to put their power on the road, the R32 simply accelerated. That made it especially appealing in countries with unpredictable climates, where performance wasn't limited to sunny weekends. Then came the feature that, at first, many enthusiasts laughed at. Instead of a traditional manual gearbox, Volkswagen offered an optional 6-speed direct-shift gearbox, better known today as DSG. Looking back, it's difficult to imagine how revolutionary that decision really was. In 2003, performance drivers believed that a proper sports car had to have 3 pedals. Automatics were considered slower, heavier, and less engaging. The idea that an electronically controlled transmission could shift faster than an experienced driver sounded almost impossible. Yet Volkswagen proved exactly that. The dual-clutch DSG could pre-select the next gear before the driver even requested it, delivering lightning-fast shifts with almost no interruption in power. Today, dual-clutch gearboxes dominate everything from everyday hatchbacks to Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, and Porsche 911s. But one of the first production cars to show the world what the technology could really do was a Volkswagen Golf. That's an incredible piece of automotive history that many people overlook. Visually, the R32 also stood apart without shouting for attention. It wore deeper front and rear bumpers, unique side skirts, distinctive alloy wheels, brushed aluminum mirrors on some markets, and perhaps its most recognizable feature, a pair of large center-mounted exhaust pipes. Those twin exhausts became an instant signature of the R32, hinting that something very unusual was hiding beneath the hatchback body. Inside, the upgrades continued. Deeply bolstered Koenig sport seats, blue-accented instrumentation, premium materials, and subtle R branding reminded drivers they were sitting in Volkswagen's flagship performance model. It was sporty without becoming uncomfortable, refined without feeling sterile. Journalists around the world praised exactly that balance. Reviews consistently described the R32 as mature, incredibly stable at high speed, and surprisingly luxurious for a compact hatchback. Some even argued that it felt closer to an entry-level premium sports coupe than to an ordinary Golf. But perhaps the most fascinating part of the story is what happened next. Volkswagen originally saw the R32 as a limited halo model, a showcase of engineering rather than the beginning of a dynasty. The company had no way of knowing that this single car would eventually give birth to an entirely new performance division. Every modern Golf R, every high-performance Volkswagen wearing the R badge, and even much of Volkswagen's current performance identity can trace its origins back to this one extraordinary hatchback. The R32 wasn't simply another fast Golf. It became the blueprint for everything that followed. The Volkswagen Golf R32 was never intended to become a legend. It wasn't created to replace the GDI, nor was it designed to be Volkswagen's best-selling model. It existed for a much simpler reason, to prove what the company's engineers were capable of when they stopped worrying about compromise. And in doing so, they built a car that would permanently change the direction of Volkswagen performance. Personally, I think that's what makes the R32 so special today. It wasn't chasing lap records. It wasn't trying to beat Ferrari or Porsche. It simply combined everything enthusiasts wanted into one remarkably complete package. A charismatic, naturally aspirated six-cylinder engine. Intelligent all-wheel drive. Revolutionary transmission technology. Everyday practicality. And a level of refinement that made it feel far more expensive than its badge suggested. Very few cars have managed to blend those qualities so naturally. Looking back more than 20 years later, it's remarkable how much of today's automotive world can be traced back to this single Golf. The DSG transmission that many enthusiasts initially dismissed is now one of the most influential gearbox technologies ever developed, used by manufacturers across the industry. The idea of a high-performance all-wheel drive hatchback has become the standard for modern hot hatches. And Volkswagen's R division, which began with this very car, has grown into one of the company's most respected performance brands. In many ways, the R32 didn't just predict the future, it helped create it. Time has also been incredibly kind to the car itself. During its production run, many buyers simply saw it as an expensive Golf. Today, enthusiasts see something very different. They see the last naturally aspirated six-cylinder Golf. They see the first R model. They see one of the earliest production cars to introduce the world to dual-clutch performance transmissions. They hear the unmistakable voice of the VR6 and remember an era before turbochargers and artificial engine sound became the norm. That combination can never be recreated. Modern Golf R models are undeniably faster. They produce more power, accelerate harder, corner with astonishing precision, and are filled with technology the engineers of 2003 could only dream about. Yet ask many Volkswagen enthusiasts which Golf they'd take home if money were no object, and you'll hear the same answer again and again: the Mk4 R32. Because performance figures eventually become outdated. Technology always moves forward. But character is timeless. And few Golfs have ever possessed as much character as the R32. It represents the end of one era and the beginning of another, the final celebration of Volkswagen's charismatic naturally aspirated VR6, and at the same time the first chapter of the modern R brand that continues to this day. That's an incredibly rare achievement for any automobile. In the end, the Golf R32 didn't change Volkswagen because it sold in huge numbers. It changed Volkswagen because it changed the company's philosophy. It proved that a Golf could be more than practical transportation. It could become a genuine performance icon. More than 2 decades later, every time a new Golf R leaves the factory, it carries a small piece of the DNA first introduced by the R32. And that's why this wasn't simply another fast hatchback. It was the Golf that changed Volkswagen forever.